Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. And again, another lovely live interview in the studio. My guest today is, of course, the leader of the Heritage Party, David Kurten. Hello, David.
Hi, Richard.
Nice to have you back again.
Yeah, here again in the studio. Great to be here.
It's lovely. I as I say often when I'm doing these sort of interviews, it's great to have that time with somebody in the studio because you get a little bit of time beforehand to sort of just catch up and all those sort of things, rather than the electrical way with screens on Zoom where it's all quite pressured. So welcome to the studio and welcome to the channel again. Here we are at the beginning of, well, in the mid-throes, I suppose, of the general election, which is on the 4th of July. Which is the Independence Day. We'll talk about a number of things connected with all of this, if that's all right with you.
Sure, yeah.
And of course the Heritage Party and what you stand for and all those sort of things and how you think it's all going to go. But the general election came as a bit of a surprise, didn't it?
It was a surprise to me, and I think
how prepared?
It was an absolute shock because I really thought it was going to be in November, maybe even January, because I thought, well, they've got absolutely nothing to gain by going early.
Yeah.
And then I heard rumours going round on this Wednesday, this 4 weeks ago. They're going to call an election. I was thinking no, but then the rumours seemed to be more persistent, and then that happened at the end of June and. The end of May, and here we are, and we got this summer election. So it was a massive shock to me. I think it was also a shock to the MPs and even the council staff who administer the elections all over the country in different constituencies. Most of them were taken completely by surprise as well, and had done no preparation.
It's amazing, isn't it? So do you think that this was a last minute a decision at number 10? Or do you think they'd planned this a little bit in advance to spring it on the country?
Yeah, well, I've discussed this with lots of people, and I've pontificated about this and thought about this. I mean, no one really knows the reason, but I think one of the more plausible explanations is that letters were going in to the chairman of the 1922 committee to have an election for a Tory leadership campaign. So there was growing discontent in the party against Rishi Sunak. The letters were building up. There might have been a challenge. There might have been a leadership contest. And Rishi Sunak just went, well, I'm not having that. I'm going to call an election. So you can't stab the knife into me. Right.
So that if he won, then that would give him the mandate. Because he's obviously been in power, but has not had the mandate from the public.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So when it came, obviously, people were saying, "Oh, it's Independence Day. What an interesting time." Does that have any significance with you?
I don't know. I mean, you can read lots of things into this, but it is very interesting, isn't it? That the UK election is on the 4th of July. The US election is on the 5th of November, on Guy Fawkes Day as well. Yeah, so there's a little bit of crossover there between the UK and the USA. I mean, I don't know if that means anything significantly, but...
but there's plenty of people out there who sort of take these dates very seriously, and they think there's something behind all of this, whether it's I don't know, some sort of taking in the astrological planes of that, and because in the old days, and you go back far enough, you had your fortune tellers, your soothsayers and all of that going up to the various emperors and presidents and going, oh yes, you should do it on this day because the Ides of March are all in the right place.
You know what? I mean, it doesn't really matter to me because I'm a Christian, and I'm a Christian. Jesus is Lord of everything. Yes. But there are people who do believe this, and they think, "Oh, we got to have this on a certain day because that's going to give us more power." And it tends to be people who are into the occult and Satanism and things. I mean, they were actually talking at one point about having the election on the 31st of October, which is a Thursday.
Oh my goodness!
This year,
can you
Halloween.
imagine that? Yeah.
And I thought, well, that would suit some people very well because there are some people who do believe that. That it gives them more sort of dark power to influence what happens, and then that spiritually influence the people who are in power.
Yes.
I'm sure that has some effect, but obviously we can pray and and win. So that doesn't bother me.
So the election was called, and we're only what are we now? Almost 10, 12 days, something like that.
It's fewer than 10 days now, isn't it? I think
I can't keep up with it.
Yeah, I think where we are is about 9 days to the election. So we're in the home straight.
Yes.
It's incredible how quickly it seems to have gone, because there's only a 6-week contest, if you like, from when it was called. And then we spend 2 weeks trying to get everyone through the nomination process. Because if you want to be a candidate, you've got to fill in a certain number of forms, raise some money for the deposit, pay that. It's expensive. It's £500 per candidate for a deposit. And you get that back if you get 5% of the vote. But, for a challenger party, there's no guarantee of that. So, it's hard for us. And but we got 41 candidates through the process, and we just had 2 weeks to do that. And then you immediately got to start campaigning. So get leaflets out and whatever else you want to do. And then hustings begin, where people are on the stage facing the audiences in their constituency. So all of that has been going on as well over the last 2 weeks. And now suddenly here we are, just over a week to the election at the time of recording. So my feet haven't touched the ground, to be honest. The last 6 weeks it's been full on, but it's been fantastic, with the Heritage Party, how everyone's just come together and mucked in and got everything done. You just got to get on and do it, one thing after the other, and do what you can. So it's been good.
We've also seen a huge number of independents who have gone through that whole process you've just described about having to get registered and finding the deposit and then getting out, which is quite a thing if you've never done it before. And I think we've seen, certainly people have been telling me and been trying to get on the show and things to sort of put their points across, that independence away from the two big parties, and it's probably, even if it's a tactical vote, to vote for somebody independent, which might work. How successful do you think the independents would have?
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be difficult for independents, isn't it? Unless they're very well known. The one independent that might do significantly better than the others is Andrew Bridgen, because he's well known, he's internationally known, he's already been the MP, he's got a big base in his own constituency, so he's very much known there, and he's got a lot of money to put into the campaign because he's got donations coming in from all over the place. It's much harder if you're standing for the first time, you're not well known, and you don't have a lot of money, and you just got to raise the money yourself.
You haven't got the time. That was the other thing, is time to sort of get to know your electorate, the potential people, and because how can you reach them? Make your arguments.
The basic campaign which we can do for most people is we get a leaflet printed, and then the Royal Mail will deliver it for free in a Westminster election, which is a really, really good deal,
right?
Because it saves you £40,000 in postage or something.
Gosh,
it really is. And spend £1,000 getting a leaflet designed and printed. You give it to the Royal Mail, and they put it through every home in the constituency for free. So I've done that where I'm standing in Bognor Regis and Littlehampton. Lots of our other candidates have done that all over the country, and you can do that if you're an independent as well. But it isn't cheap, because you pay your £500 deposit, and then you've got to pay another £1,000 or whatever for a leaflet. But then if you want to do more, you've got to go round the doors, and you've got to talk to people on the doors. And I was thinking about this, because there's about 50,000 homes or something like that on average in a constituency, so you really need about 1,000 man hours over a 4-week period to go and knock on every door and say, have you heard of this, me, or you heard of whatever candidate there is, are you thinking about us, talk to someone. That takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and you need a lot of volunteers to do that, and it's really not easy to get to find 1,000 man hours from 20 or 30 or 40 different people to go out and do that consistently over a month.
So one of the things that sort of struck me is that most people it would seem, are very unhappy with the Conservatives, with their history and how they dealt with the lockdowns and things like that. I mean, obviously there are some that thought it was a great idea, but I think what with the information that's coming out now, that perhaps these lockdowns were not such a good idea. We've seen the Partygate and things like that happen. So they're a bit upset with that. At the same time, a lot of people are worried about Keir Starmer being in control of the premiership and where we're going. And we've also seen their opinions on what's going on in the Middle East and what's going on in Russia. So these are two huge things which will make people think twice about those two parties and whether there's actually any difference between the two parties as there used to be.
Well, I mean, to me, I mean, I would explain it like this. I mean, the difference between the Tories and Labour is like the difference between cancer and turbo cancer. Yeah. So they're not good. Yeah. Okay.
You're going to die, but you can either die quickly or you can die a little bit more slowly in agony. You know, which one is it going to be?
Yeah, I mean, the Conservatives are not conservative in any way, shape or form whatsoever anymore. I mean, they locked down the country and took away all of our fundamental freedoms. Yes. We had to, resist and fight for that in the face of state tyranny enforced by the police and the TSG riot police. It was absolutely horrible and hideous, And then they brought in no job, no jab regulations saying you can't work unless you give up your medical autonomy. I mean, that's not conservative. It's not even liberal in the true sense of the word.
It's not even human, is it?
No.
As a human policy.
No, not. It's anti-human, isn't it? I mean, it's horrendous. And these things are not traditional vaccines. I mean, that's a whole other discussion. But
Absolutely,
these are gene technologies. They're experimental injections with no long-term safety data. And the safety data that we do have shows that they're not safe. So no one should have even been injected with it, let alone forced to be injected or coerced to have it to keep their jobs or to travel. I mean, so, you've got that. And the only difference there between the Tories and Labour is Labour would have done it faster and harder and longer, So, but what's the difference? Pick your poison,
Absolutely.
And then with the war situation, obviously, going into that, moving on from 2020 to 2022, and I was saying from the beginning, this is nothing to do with us. The war between Russia and Ukraine, the West has got involved in poking the bear, in trying to bring Ukraine into the NATO and EU orbit, which we shouldn't be doing. I mean, it would be far more sensible and far better for the security of NATO countries to just let Ukraine be neutral. And so then we have some kind of détente with Russia. I mean, I think we should be friends with Russia, myself. I mean,
why not?
Yeah, they're white Christian country.
Than, what did they say? Keep your enemies close, and your
keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yeah,
I'm not so good at that, to be honest. If someone's an enemy, I can't help showing it.
But as you say, if you're, why not be friends with Russia? You don't have to embrace their policies, and they're unlikely to march in on Great Britain.
No, but I mean, in the 2000s decade, Russia was coming to the G7 summit. The G7 was renamed the G8, and there was a thawing of relations. It was very, very friendly.
So why then have we made them into the bogeyman?
I think something has happened. Some people have made decisions in the U.S. State Department, the deep state. Obviously, the global cabal extends into the governments of all Western countries. As Klaus Schwab says, we've penetrated the cabinets of all governments around the world. So there's all a tie up between the WEF, the WHO, the UN, the Pentagon. All of these people, they're all connected together. And somebody somewhere has decided, well, we want actually to effect regime change in Russia, and then carve it up into little statelets so it'll be like Eastern Europe, and then we can go in and control their resources. So they were using Ukraine as a sort of battering ram to try to batter Russia, and hopefully then effect regime change. They've brought in this, they got a color revolution in Ukraine in 2014. They effected regime change there. They tried to do it in Belarus in 2020. It wasn't successful. And they thought, well, we're going to to try and do it in Russia as well. And Navalny was their guy. They wanted Navalny in as the leader of Russia, very, Western friendly. It would have been like Zelensky, and that's what they wanted. But it hasn't worked. Putin is still there, and now we have enmity between the West and Russia, which shouldn't be. I mean, this is one of the great tragedies of the 21st century. I think people will look back, if we don't sort this out now, and if it escalates further into a hot war, which it could do, because the NATO powers that be are giving more and more weapons to Zelensky in Ukraine, successively more and more building up. Now we've got Storm Shadow cruise missiles, and now we've said, you can fire them into Russia if you want. I mean, it's insane.
And at what point did the British people say that that's okay to do?
Well, we had mass propaganda at the beginning, didn't we? I mean, and it was shocking to me that people who got Brexit, who got lockdowns, who got injections, some of them suddenly immediately went back and flying blue and yellow flags in their bios and on their social media pages, even sometimes physically.
Yes.
They were totally taken in by the propaganda that we need to support Ukraine. So there was huge propaganda coming at us all over the world.
Is that what makes us complicit to it? Because people change their avatars to the Ukraine flag, and so then the government go, it seems that the people are on our side, we can now start giving them weapons of war.
I don't. Well, you know what? I wouldn't blame the people for this, because the people are manipulated.
Exactly. No, yeah. I'm not saying that it's their fault. I'm just saying that is the government sort of looking at the reaction that their propaganda, like everything, has influenced people's minds.
Yeah.
So people have gone, we better support the poor people of Ukraine, because they are the victims. So everybody likes a victim, don't they?
Yeah.
So they support them, and then the government kind of go, look, everyone's supporting them, so we can make these magnanimous gestures of we'll send them all the war weapons without actually pulling the trigger ourselves, but actually we've kind of entered into the war by doing that, haven't we?
Yeah, well, it's like, so you give someone a gun and they shoot someone. Who's responsible? The person who shoots, or the person that gives the shooter the gun?
And who manufactured the gun in the first place?
It's that kind of, you got to think of it like that. And that's how Russia sees it, and you can't ignore that. But, you talk about the Ukrainians being the victims, and they are. I mean, it's horrible, because 500,000 Ukrainian men, and now some of them women, are being sent to the front lines to die. And I don't want that to continue happening.
Absolutely.
But then we talk about that. But the media is very, very looking to forget what's been happening over the 8 years before 2022, when ethnic Russians in the Donbass were killed systematically by Zelensky and Poroshenko and the Azov battalion and the Ukrainian security services, because they didn't stick to the Minsk agreements, which were agreed in 2014 between Russia and Ukraine. And they broken that, and the West was very happy to support them and ignore the slaughter of ethnic Russians in Donetsk and Luhansk. And then Putin has come and said, well, no, you're not going to kill ethnic Russians anymore. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, Ukraine are the victims. And the Ukrainian people are the victims of everybody else, and I just want to stop the war, stop the slaughter. And there was a deal on the table in April 2022, and Boris Johnson went and scuppered that by going to Zelensky and saying, no, don't do this peace deal, and now we've got 2 more years of war. Horrible.
So this is something that most people, I would imagine, agree with you, that we don't want war. Who wants innocent men, women and children? And of course it's only the high echelons, the so-called elites, who are having these bloody arguments. The people on the ground aren't privy to it. They they don't really want to be holding rifles and pointing them at each other. It does seem a very strange situation, but obviously they can't just not pick up those rifles, because they feel they're duty bound to do it, or the other lot will shoot them.
Some of them are press ganged into doing that. I mean, there's all these videos all over the place you can see where the Ukrainian security force, recruiters, as they like, go and find young men just on the streets on their own, 4 or 5 of them come along, and then say, right, you're coming with us, get in the car, bash them around the head, beat them until they submit and go, and then they're driven off.
It's kind of, I suppose, a bit like the First World War, in which if you weren't prepared to fight for your country and you were saying, "Oh no, I'm going to object or be what is it, the
conscientious
objector, exactly," and you were taken away and shot, by your own side. I mean, I thought that we had grown up a little bit since then.
Well, I mean, it's very interesting because I learned about this in school, and the way it was presented as well, these people were cowards.
Yes.
And that's what is tried to be ingrained into you from a very, very early age. And now I'm older, I can say, well, no, that's wrong.
Absolutely.
And there's more people today. I don't think they'll be able to do that in this country today, because there will be too much resistance, and quite rightly so, because we're not going to say, I'm not going to go and fight for King Charles and David Cameron and Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer.
Well, it isn't now. It's interesting you mentioned that, because isn't Rishi Sunak talking about national service and all these sort of things? And in my mind, the government, whether it's Labour or Conservative, have over the last 20, 30 years taken away any sense of patriotism for the country, any sense of national pride. So, and of course the royalty, the royal family, have not really done themselves much favours in being of the people or looking after the people. So when it comes to anybody wanting to fight for this country, who is in their right mind is going to get up and say, actually, I'm going to fight for England or for Great Britain? Because it doesn't really mean anything to anybody anymore.
Well, that patriotism that was there in the First World War and the Second World War is not there anymore.
Exactly.
I mean, there are people who go out and they fly the flag, and that's great, but they are derided by the establishment.
Exactly, and they're the ones that they're going to expect to pick up the weapons and go and defend us. I mean, it is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can't. They despise the people who are still proud of their country.
Yes.
But then they want them to go. They'll be the first they'll send off to go and die, while they stay at home, still deriding those people and calling them, stupid gammons, whatever. That's what they say about.
So clearly these two main parties really, in a lot of people's mind, have not got anything going for them. And then they've got all those other things that they've been, certainly the Tories, but backed up by Labour, the digital IDs, the CBDCs, all the surveillance stuff, the 5G technology, and then all the mysterious and manipulative and nefarious sky stuff that's going on that people don't want, the geoengineering, and the fluoride in the water that again people don't want, and yet neither party will listen to anybody and say, oh, actually, you're the people, you should be making the decisions. Why is it, oh, hang on, we won't do the things that you don't want. So but instead they actually push this down on us. So if those two parties effectively are really, in most people's minds, a waste of space, then who else do they vote for?
Yeah, I mean, I would say all five, if you like, are the Westminster parties: Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Green, SNP. They're all following all of these agendas, all of the Agenda 2030 stuff that you've just mentioned, CBDCs, geoengineering, etc., the net zero agenda, the woke agenda, the mass immigration agenda. They're all on board with all of these things, which is why I started the Heritage Party in 2020 to be something that is just common sense, that is, what people would want for the country, just for the government to go away and leave people alone.
Yes.
Stop bringing millions of people into the country when we don't need millions of people to come to the country, which affects the housing market, it affects healthcare, it affects education, it affects crime, it affects society, it affects everything. Stop pushing all of this wokery, particularly this comprehensive sexuality education on children. We need to ban that, like they've done in Hungary, like they've done in Russia. Protect children from these, activists who want to go in and sexualize kids. I mean, what country allows this to happen? Yeah, exactly. But we do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm angry about this.
And you're quite right. And the thing is, and we want people to be angry. I'm talking for the people, and you're there as a potential prime minister of this country, about to change things, and let's hope you do at some point. But why is it so difficult then for somebody like yourself, who, and we've had you on before, we've looked at your manifesto, and you talk common sense. You come from a Christian background, which is the background of this country. most people, even if they're not religious, would agree and go along with the traditions and customs of this country in the past, the nice ones, and all of that. And I can't see why something like the Heritage Party would be the one that everybody just immediately flocks to. But why is it so difficult to get you into that position?
I would think so. I wrote the manifesto in terms of positive principles, and I thought, well, this is something 10 or 15 million people would like. And when people do hear about us and read the manifesto, I have so many people saying, this is amazing, I love it. Why haven't I not heard of this before?
Yeah.
And the reason is we are so suppressed in the media. I mean, first of all, mainstream media, they don't have me on at all. Even the alternative mainstream media doesn't have me on anymore. I'm not particularly upset, but I was cancelled on Monday. I put it on Twitter. I was going to go on the Julia Hartley Brewer show to talk about Ukraine.
Yes.
They rang me on Sunday, said, can you come on the show to talk about it? I said, yeah, great. Yeah. 8:30 on Monday, they gave me a text. Oh, sorry, we're dropping you from the show. So so that happens with increasing regularity now by Talk TV, and also disappointingly by GB News as well. I mean, a lot of times they've said, can you come on the show, and then they've dropped me as well.
And is that because some bright researcher has said, oh yeah, we should get the Heritage Party on there, and then a producer's seen the list and gone, oh no, actually we know his views.
maybe it is. Someone thinks, oh, we'll have him on, and then someone else goes, oh no, he's not on anymore. So I seem to have been quietly dropped by them over the last few months. So
which must be very infuriating, especially if you've got common sense ideas and you're pushing back against tyranny. Hopefully,
yeah, you would think that the people would want someone like me on and other people to talk about these things. But I mean, I do have my show on TNT now. I mean, I'm not doing it at the moment because it's the election period, but that's fantastic because I have lots of different guests on and they're great. I can say whatever I like, even things
so has that raised your profile a lot?
I think so, but among our type of people, if you like, and not so much among normies, and I need to go and reach the normies, and I think people are sort of putting a wall between me and everyone else. I mean, this is how algorithms work on social media now, isn't it? They keep these people in a bubble here and those people in a bubble there, and so you can't sort of engage with each other. It's tough. So I'm very, very suppressed, or the algorithm keeps me and a lot of other people in my situation, they keep you just in this bubble over here with these people. So it's very difficult. Or with the election now, it is good because we are getting leaflets out and actually going to people on a one-to-one basis on the doors and things like that. But this is why people say, oh, never heard of you before. Why have we not heard of you? Well, the reason is because there's a deliberate, algorithmic, attempt to stop people from hearing about us and then divert everyone into, the mainstream. There's this dichotomy. Oh, there's 4 parties, but they're all the same. But there's a pretend fake opposition among them.
So do you think that a lot of people, and now there is an apathy with people to engage in politics in general, because there's a feeling that whatever I say, whatever I do as a voter is meaningless. You've got the councils not listening to local people. You've got the government and the MPs when they're doing their surgeries or being written to saying, no, your opinion about a certain medical intervention is wrong. Your opinion about certain things being sprayed in the skies is wrong. Do you think that there is apathy out there, that people are disengaged, or are they more excited now?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about these things. I know dozens of people who've written to their MPs and councillors about 5G or geoengineering or fluoride, all of these kind of things, and they just get back standard letters which are completely dismissive, almost, hinting that someone is stupid or a conspiracy theory, even theorist. Sorry, even for asking the question. So they're treated with disdain.
Yeah.
So it isn't surprising that people are giving up, and I would say, yeah, you're right to give up with these mainstream parties, these old parties, because they're not going to do a thing for you. But we mustn't give up trying to change from within. And that's why I started something different, which is listening to people, and I think we do have all of these concerns concerns in our manifesto. So if you want to vote to not have fluoride in your water, you can vote for the Heritage Party. If you want to vote to stop 5G coming up because it hasn't been safety tested, you can vote for the Heritage Party. If you want to vote to stop geoengineering, you can vote for the Heritage Party now. You've got a choice, So I'm just, at the very least, giving people a choice to vote for something different. And my only wish is I could have done more, because we have 41 candidates and there's 650 seats. This is our first election. It's fantastic to have, so many candidates the first time. But I wish I could give everybody a chance to vote for us rather than just, a small number of seats. But, we're just going to try and keep on going until we can get to that point.
Yes, well, and that's what it's about. But do you think, so here's the next question then, is the next phase of where we're going? We've seen this escalation towards Agenda 21 and 30. We've seen how the influence of the WEF and the WHO and the people who are holding their strings, pushing ever more for the 15-minute cities and more constraint, the wilding of the countryside, the attack on farming, and all of this. Whatever happens with the next Prime Minister and the next government, are we heading on a downward slope? Is there optimism out there? What do you think is going to happen as a result of whoever gets in?
Yeah, whoever gets in. I mean, if it is Rishi Sunak again or Keir Starmer, obviously they're going to continue with the agendas. We know that. There isn't any difference between them. As I said, one will just push the agendas a little bit faster than the other one. It doesn't, it's like a car going towards a cliff at 50 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour. It doesn't really matter.
And Starmer has said he'd rather be associated with the WEF, hasn't he? Yeah. He said that in an interview, which is quite staggering.
I know. But the thing is with this is, some people say, well, I'm not going to vote. Elections don't matter. It's all decided. We can't change anything. But these people put incredible amounts of time and money and energy into getting their people into these positions of power because they want people to bring those policies in all the countries around the world. They wouldn't do that if it wasn't important. And they wouldn't spend time suppressing people like me if it wasn't important for them to do that. So that says to me, well, these positions are not insignificant. They can make a change. People in those positions can make a change and they can make a difference. Otherwise, they wouldn't spend all this money and time trying to get their people to be Prime Minister.
Right.
So we still can make a difference if we can get our people in to be Prime Minister and Home Secretary and Foreign Secretary and MPs.
But do you not think, I don't mean to interrupt, but do you not think that this system that has been here for quite some time now, is so infiltrated and also is so ingrained in the ordinary everyday person as the only system of governance that you have, this system of voting for MPs and then having a House of Commons and this whole, in the past we had kings who were making the rules, and then back in the Saxon times we had the Witan who were, wise men would come together and form policies and things, or vote in which king was going to be the ruler. We do seem to be in a situation where this system is the only system that people can think. They can't think that there's another way of governing a body of people. And therefore, because this system is now so well known and so well infiltrated over the years, that it seems on the outside exactly what you've been saying there about, well, if we can get in, we can change it from the inside. But my worry is that the system is so corrupt now, with the civil service in there, with all the bad apples already, that it doesn't matter who's in there, they will either be corrupted or they will be quietly removed. Do you not think that's possible?
The thing is, the people, it's people who are corrupt. And, that could be 10 people or it could be 10,000 people. But if you have a new system, and those people are still there, they still exist, they could corrupt any new system that you have as well. So, I hear some people saying, well, we need to just get rid of this system and build a new system. But then the question is, well, what new system would you build? There's an area of Denmark in Copenhagen, I think it's called Christiania or something, and they tried to build an anarchic society with no rules. Everyone would just go, they'd, live in peace and harmony. There'd be no rules. But immediately there's a power vacuum, and then someone took over, and they invented their own rules, for the people that live there. And some of the rules and the laws that they have, which they all are kind of agreed to, are brutal. There are brutal punishments if you step out of line,
right?
In that system. But and it's sort of like semi-autonomously existing in Denmark there. The thing is, whatever system gets created, that there will be a new system of law, a system of currency will evolve in wherever you have.
But I mean, we have a system of first past the post.
Yeah.
Or we could have the personal
the PR.
PR.
I very much like PR. Yeah. And that could change. We'd still have the House of Commons,
but who would implement PR?
It would have to be someone that's not Tory and Labour. That's the thing. All the parties, apart from Tory and Labour, support PR.
Right.
Even the Lib Dems and Greens. I certainly do, and other parties do.
But is that because the Labour and Conservatives, it suits them not to?
Of course,
yes.
Yeah.
So all the time they're in power, you don't get that PR.
Right, yeah.
And so as a result of that, the system doesn't change.
Right, yeah.
So in a way, that's kind of what I'm saying. All the time, these people have infiltrated and they're there and saying, well, actually, this system suits us, so we're not going to bloody change it and let the people choose.
But people can vote against Tory and Labour. It is just astounding that even now in the polls, Labour are on 40%, the Tories are on 20%, and I don't know anybody who's going to vote for those two parties.
Right.
But there must be some sort of quiet people around.
Who's being asked in the polls?
Do
we trust the polls?
But there are people, that we don't meet.
Yes.
It's really interesting going out on polling day. I go around some of the polling stations to see what's going on, and there's a whole, class of people that I've never seen. They're different. They just come out of their houses. They don't go to the shopping centres. They wouldn't go on a march or anything like that. They're probably not on social media, but they come out to cast their vote, and they're just like, well, you're in a kind of another world. But there are lots and lots of them, and they must be the sort of people that are the majority still are going to vote Tory and Labour, or so we're told.
Well, we know that Tories often get a lot of the older population voting for them. Although, of course, we also know in recent times that the Tories have been, shall we say, hastening their lives in some fashion. So, do you think that the elderly, or I shouldn't say elderly, the elders of our society are more likely to vote for Tory still, despite that?
I think they are still.
Despite Midazolam Matt and his shenanigans?
This is the thing, because we're very aware of that.
Yes.
Obviously, we talk about it all the time. We understand what's going on. But there's a lot of people who just don't know. And for a lot of people, they've moved on. What happened in 2020, 21, 22 is a thing of the past.
So 4 years is enough for people to forget.
People have got the memory of a goldfish sometimes. It's dreadful, and it's like, well, that's the past now.
Yeah.
I was at some hustings. I've been to a couple of hustings for Bognor Regis and Littlehampton, where I'm standing, and the questions that were nothing about lockdown or injections or even the Ukraine war. The people's concerns were dentistry and special needs education and sewage and flooding. Now, all of those things are very, very important, but, there was nothing concerning what's happened in the last 4 years. People, out there.
And and it should be that people are worried about sewage and all those things that you mentioned. But of course, we've had such an unusual last 4 years, and particularly with lockdown. I have to say, I do find that incredible that people are not still thinking, hold on a second, you're the party that locked us down. You're the party that mandated a medical intervention which was not tested. It was rushed at the speed of science, whatever that means. Right. And a lot of people have suffered as a result of that. And yet people... I suppose in the one way, then you kind of get to that point where you think, well, they deserve what they get, don't they?
I wouldn't want to say that to anybody, but it's.
Well, I'm prepared to say that, which in a way is like if people cannot get their head round the fact that what's happened and it really doesn't affect them, then it's almost like there's a them and us, isn't there? There's those that are woken up to this and have gone, hang on a minute, this is really vital and important, and then you might need to break away from those that are just not willing to engage with the past, the recent past.
People need to be informed, and I think people do need to look at things on a more deeper level. And society's been so dumbed down. And a lot of that is the fault of the people who are doing the dumbing down, media and education professionals. But then we also need to make sure that we are not dumbed down ourselves and we stay intelligent. And, you and I and people watching this are, and we inform ourselves. We get informed and we figure out what's going on. But there are a lot of people who just aren't bothered, and they're just concerned about me, what concerns me.
Yes.
And that's the thing.
That's a deliberate. That's a deliberate policy that has been enacted over generations, isn't it? To make people care more about themselves than their fellow man, so that they can actually be manipulated and not worry that there are people like yourself who are saying, actually, here's some wholesome policies that would benefit you and your family and your friends and the whole surrounding society, so that you're not being looked at by cameras, you're not being listened to by your telephone, you're not being poisoned by whichever means that is available, and reduce all the bad stuff. So how do we get to reach them?
This is a part of the way of doing this is being in politics. I mean, this is how I'm trying to do this, and me. And my candidates as well, Heritage Party candidates, are going to hustings and speaking truth. And a lot of people are really shocked because it's maybe the first time they've ever heard someone speak against the net zero agenda and say that carbon dioxide is not harmful. We shouldn't be building wind turbines. We should be looking after our farmland. We shouldn't be destroying farms and paying farmers not to farm. But people have been so indoctrinated by these kind of things that they're like, it's a shock for someone to come along and actually speak truth. But sometimes we've got to shock people like this, and this is a really great opportunity to do that.
And how do they react then? Are they, as we often see them going, no, I'm not even prepared to listen. Are they listening?
Sometimes people are like that. I find with some of the hustings around the country, from my own and what people have told me, is that they get packed out by far left activists or Labour activists or Green activists. They're going in and then they're deliberately booing me and other people. I got booed and heckled in my hustings. And, you had the Labour woman next to me saying, I hope everyone's going to treat everybody with respect. Yes. And then the whole thing was packed out with Labour activists who were booing me. So, I mean, the gaslighting and the hypocrisy there is completely off the scale. But I was booed for saying I supported Brexit. I was booed for saying that I was against funding lots of diversity officers because it was a waste of money. I was booed when I said I'm pro-life, all of these kind of things. It's absolutely outrageous, It shows how nasty some of these people are. But there are people who you shock them in a way by saying something, as though I believe it. And they've never heard someone say something different than what's on the television because they just get all their information through the television.
Yes.
And when they're faced with someone who is speaking rationally, calmly, scientifically from a different point of view, it sometimes shocks people, but then they realise, that's not the only opinion. There is a different opinion to what we're getting on the mainstream media, and that needs to be done.
But it's a very slow process, isn't it? And time is not on our side.
Right, it isn't. I know it's difficult. It's slow, reaching one person at a time. Everything is against us. The algorithms are against us. The censorship is against us. I mean, passive no platforming, if you like, is against us. True, it is a difficult thing, but what some people say, and I will also do, this is a spiritual battle as well. So by praying and into things, we can speed up the process.
Well, let's say we can. I spoke to a chap who was an engineer. I'd made a video the other day, viewers may have seen it, that was about the 28 towers that are going up, these 5G towers that are going up in Worthing, where I am. And then the following day, I happened to be out with Julia. We were wandering down to the seafront, And there was another tower I hadn't seen, and the guys, the workmen were in there wiring up the engineers, the electrical engineers. So I went up to them and I said, is there any chance that you could actually just take this down? And thinking that the guys would just look at me a bit, he's a fruitcake. But actually he was nodding. He says, I wish I could. I wish I could. And he said, I know what these are going to do to us. They're going to radiate our brains. And I thought, wow. So I then said to him, I said, do you know the best way to nobble these things? And he said, don't worry, when the revolution comes, and it is going to come because people are now beginning to feel the pinch and politicians are not listening, there will be a big pushback from the people. Now, I didn't say that, and I didn't suggest this. He was saying this, and he may be right, he may be wrong, but he said as soon as that happens, he will be one of the first that will be down there because they know how to unwire them and disconnect these things. And so that gave me a lot of hope that actually ordinary everyday people are aware. They may not know Agenda 21 and Agenda 30 as you and I understand it, but they may be aware that, or they're feeling the pinch and the sense that these policies are just so anti-human. And so, I mean, try and explain this to me. Here we are in the 21st century, and we've been running politics, and politicians have come with their begging bowls, and they've said, vote for me and I'll improve the NHS, I'll protect the borders, we'll improve the police, all these things, and schooling. And yet, when we look around, we are in the worst situation I think we've ever been. I mean, when I was in the 60s and 70s as a young man, things were so much freer, it was fun, it was all nice. Now it seems incredibly repressive, and the street furniture is all there to sort of either tell you what to do or tell you not what to do. And everything, the modern technology is listening to us, spying on us. Why is it that we are in this incredibly oppressive society and nobody seems to notice?
It's horrible, I know, and everything is so depressing as well.
Yes.
And the new architecture is deliberately designed to depress your soul, I think. There's no beauty in it. It's all ugly. And all over the place. It's horrible, I know. And it's has been a slow and a long process, hasn't it? But I think it's accelerated, actually, since about 2010, or certainly since 2015. But
this is what. But you see, this is why it's so important that people like you, who are standing up with wholesome, common sense policies, and not everybody is necessarily going to agree to everything. You're Christian, and some people may not agree to that, but that doesn't really matter. It's what you're standing for, and why it's so important that people like you are listened to in the same amount of coverage as the Labour and the Conservative, is because you're standing up for life. For us to live freely. And most people would want that if only they understood that the other bunch are not.
Hopefully they would do, absolutely.
Well, I can't, I mean, if you put the proposal in the truth from the others that was actually we support that people are more vaccinated, that you don't eat wholesome food, that will keep you in environments which are very limiting, that we want you to behind screens, we want to dumb you down, and eventually actually we want to bump you off. I mean, if they actually said the truth of what they really mean, and then the alternative is David Kurten, and a much more benign, family-friendly, wholesome, eat well, stay free, travel where you want, but abide the law, of course. That's very important. This is why I get so frustrated with politicians and all of it, because to me it seems like we are in a war. And it may not be the war with Russia and all of that. It's the war of the people against the tyranny of government.
Or it's more that they're making war on us and they haven't even declared it.
Exactly.
They're doing it by underhand means. And this is what everything you've said there is Agenda 2030, because it looks all really nice on the surface, all gender equality. But what that means is, there's going to be 79 genders and you're all going to be equally poor, and equally
and if you
oppressed.
Upset anybody, you misgender somebody, it's like the end of your career. And
Exactly.
Nobody's allowed to make a mistake. That's the thing. Oh, I misgendered you. Sorry, mate. You've got no right to exist anymore.
Yeah, right. And, freedom has been taken away tacitly by, sort of no platforming and things like this. But like you say, now there's the surveillance society. This control grid is going up around us all over the place with, you had cameras, CCTV cameras. We've had them for 30 or 40 years. But now you've got AI cameras going up all over the place, which is a new level of surveillance.
Absolutely.
And no one's been asked. I mean, it's not even in any manifesto. I don't even think there's a law about it to either allow it or prohibit it. It's just happening. The police are all over the country are doing it. And you got the 5G towers going up as well. And, they're going up with fake safety certificates. I mean, I've had some people on my show talk about this, that they're getting safety certificates from a company that was dissolved in 2015. It doesn't exist anymore.
That's right. Yeah,
So how can they be getting permission from the council to do this without the proper safety checks? And it's just absolutely appalling.
Yeah. No, I mean, and so, but then you have that situation that we're worrying about it, or we're discussing it, but it's not changing.
No.
What do we have to do? And it does seem that the pantomime of the election will carry on, and one of the big parties are likely to be the Prime Minister. I mean, you're not likely to be the Prime Minister.
Probably not, because I've only got 41 candidates, so it's difficult with the number of candidates I've got, obviously.
And that's not me being nasty, because I'd love you to be Prime Minister.
Maybe next time, but who knows? If we have a hung parliament,
next time.
Yeah, I know exactly. But there's possibly there's a possibility we might have a hung parliament, in which case they might bring in PR, which means we'll have a better chance of getting some people in next time. But act locally as well. I'm always saying to people, join us, join the Heritage Party. You can do it on heritageparty.org, and stand yourself to become a local candidate. I mean, there are local elections in various places every year. Next year, there are county council elections all over England. Very, very important elections. So if you want to make a difference, and you want to stop low traffic neighbourhoods and 15-minute cities and all these kind of things, you have to stand and get involved. And we will help you to do that. So please get involved and stand. You can't complain that the councils are doing something if you haven't stood yourself in an election to try to become a councillor, and then stop it from happening, and actually reverse things, and you can even make things better if you're a councillor. So my plea to everyone, as always, is get involved in the system, stand, try to get power yourself, then you can change things. Because if you keep relying on Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Green to make a change, well, you'll be waiting for eternity.
Yeah, no. Well, you're probably right. I mean, sadly, the decision I've made this year is that I'm not going to get involved with this election at all. I don't really want to be responsible for adding my vote to anything that I feel is actually a system that is ended. But I do admire you very much and your efforts for what you're doing, because I mean, I can't speak for any of the independents, because I haven't met all the independents, but I don't trust reform. The Greens, my sister was some time ago, she stood for the Greens, and she's extremely left wing, but she did believe in green issues and the traditional green issues, like Patrick Moore's green issues and things like that. But she joined them, and she found that during, I think, the last election back in whenever that was, seems so long ago, that they were all a bunch of loonies. I mean, they just seem to have extreme views on all sorts of things. So I don't trust those. I don't trust the SNP,
in Scotland,
and not the Liberals, the Liberal Democrats.
Dems,
I don't trust any of them. And you just go, in the end, you just say, I have no idea now who I would trust. And I think I would give the vote to you because you're not in this area,
not
unfortunately.
in this constituency, unfortunately. No.
And if you had the 650, then you to me are the only one that I am aware of who stands for what policies I would really endorse, and I think that you would have the wherewithal to do it. But this one I'm not, and I just wonder how many people will be bothered to engage with the terrorists who are itching to take on the next phase of their plan.
That's right, and they are making war on us in many different ways. I mean, obviously with the lockdowns, injections, I mean, they're lethal injections.
Yes.
So everyone who's been injected has been injected with a poison, that has been given through the parties in Parliament have endorsed that. So I would put them on trial. I mean, Julian Assange was freed yesterday, but which is great. But the people he speaks about, they're the ones that should be in prison.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens there in that. We're sort of coming to the end of this. Obviously, people should be voting for you. Which is in the 41 areas that you are. Yeah. Is there any final messages you'd like to, political messages you'd like to impart about anything new and interesting that the Heritage Party have got that might be the thing that makes them put the X on the box?
I think we're the only party that is specifically against Agenda 2030, and we've said that from the very beginning. We started as a socially conservative party. We still are. We have those sort of Christian principles in our manifesto, but we're also for freedom. Our strapline is freedom, family, nation. So we want to uphold families and support them through the tax system, but they're discriminated against at the moment. But freedom is so important. We need to uphold our fundamental freedoms. And, one thing or a couple of things that we would say that are different to anybody else is we want to dismantle the whole concept of hate in law, because there shouldn't be hate speech and hate crime whereby people can be dragged through the courts just for their opinions. And now governments are trying to bring in laws and regulations on misinformation and disinformation. But who decides what that is?
Yeah.
It's the people who brought in the laws. Keir Starmer will be deciding what's disinformation, the guy who was there and involved in the Jimmy Savile trial, So do you want that? No, I don't think so. And all the other parties in Parliament are just the same. So, we're against all of that. We dismantle the concept of hate. We get rid of the concept of gender in law, which is absolute nonsense. And, that's something people are really, really concerned about, is what's happening in schools with kids. We really need to get rid of this comprehensive sexuality education, which is really damaging children's upbringing, and fight for our fundamental freedoms. So we need to come out of Agenda 2030 completely and restore our nation.
And so and so, if you manage to get some candidates in, if you've got the potential of getting people actually sitting there, you'd be the thorn in the side.
We would, to begin with, and I would just use every opportunity I have to speak in Parliament about, what needs to be done about restoring our country to being a healthy and a wholesome place.
Yes.
Obviously, it would be very difficult with just 2 or 3 MPs among a sea of Labour, Lib Dem, Greens. It would be horrible. I remember what that was like in the London Assembly, where it was like two of us. I was with UKIP back in the day for Brexit, and we were among like a sea of the Uniparty. It was horrible. And then when the lockdowns came, I was the only one who was against lockdowns and injections. So I know what it's like being sort of 1 against 23.
Yes.
But we got to do it. But then that's the wedge we're in. And then we can do more and more and more. So we need to, it's step by step by step. We need to push back and push back and push back until we win and never give up.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. We must never give up. David Kurten, it's been an absolute joy to have you in the studio again, and I'm sure we'll do it again.
Yeah.
And it was very nice to appear on your TNT show.
Oh yes.
Some I forget what we were talking about, but it was great to be on that as well. So do go and check out the Heritage Party, particularly if they're in your area. That would be good. Little X on the box if you're going to go and vote. That would be a recommendation from me. And then check out your TNT show. But of course, that's after the election. You also have your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I do. I haven't been doing as much on my YouTube channel.
You've been a busy boy, haven't you?
I've been so busy with the election, of course, and getting everyone ready to stand. But still putting a few things out, so that's still there.
Yeah, because you put in a lot of information about Agenda 21, and you often hear these things before a lot of other people. So do check it out. I'll put the link in the description, of course.
Yeah, thanks.
But that's it from today's show. We hope you enjoyed that. Good luck at the election.
Thank you.
I wish you well and all that, especially now as we've been given some very hot weather to stomp about, haven't we? It looks like the pilot's rotor has had some time off from the spraying in the skies, which is a nice relief for everybody. So there we go. Nice. Anyway, David, wonderful to see you.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah.
I will be back, of course, with more monologues and more wonderful guests. But in the meantime, from lovely David Kurten and myself, thanks ever so much for watching. Until next time, bye-bye.